Hello, and welcome to Hedgehog Storytime, where I read my weird original fiction. The following story is part of the Mayhem Cerebrum project, linked to the playlist in the description below. Yes, you have to read them all. No, that is not a request. Apologies, this episode has been so delayed. I had a friend visiting, and then I got sick. It was a time. But it's back. I wanted to write this episode primarily because I feel like I've done a pretty good job of systematically breaking Bake down from this, big figurehead into a fucking idiot. And I feel like now that we've established that he's a fucking idiot, I need to start pulling back and going, okay, no, but he is really the powerful God King at the same time. He's both. He can be both. And this is my first step towards that. So, without further ado, here is Bad Cop, Worst Cop, Part 2. I am a very busy woman, Ekaterina was not very pleased to talk to them. They met up with her at the new recording studio on 6th Avenue. Marcus Pearson had been renting out the space when he wasn't using it, and Ekaterina was one of his more frequent clients. Computers were a bit of a rarity in Discord, especially ones new enough to run the sort of software she needed to back her electric violin. The only reason they were even here interrupting her was that you couldn't say no to the Lord of Discord. There were stories of the things he would do to you. And yet she still had the gall to look notably ticked at his presence, although Germans constantly looked ticked to him, so maybe that was it. Bake had already explained the situation, which wasn't helping her mood. So you think I would take the time to steal from a man I've never met? What would I even do with guild contracts?
I agree, it's a bit of a stretch,
Jack opined.
Trust me, of all three of our principal suspects, you're the least involved.
Bake mollified her. Her eyebrow twitched. Then why are you wasting my time?
Well, I was thinking to myself.
Bake leaned an arm on the desk between them, and the violinist nearly scowled.
If I were you, what would your motive be?
Like I said, I don't know anyone from the Merchants Guild. Bake shook his head.
No, but you certainly know Dallas Sinclair.
Ekaterina finally glanced up from the screen. You said her card was found on the scene, yes?
Right on the money.
Bake nodded.
Gotta say, you're a pretty big name for the bottom dollar. Sinclair herself even commented on it, and she's tying you down for a whole 3 months, huh? It'd be great if something happened to her. Then you'd easily get out of your contract, right?
If you are assuming I would implicate her in a crime simply to get out of a less than generous contract.
I am. Doing that. Yeah.
This response was quite obviously not what she was expecting. Well, don't.
Sorry, too late.
Bake stood, spinning on his heel to face the door.
Now if you'll excuse me, we've got some additional sleuthing to do. But I hope we don't dig up anything incriminating.
Jack skulked close behind him. You won't, she called, but Bake slammed the door and pretended not to hear her. They got about 10 feet down the hallway before Jack scratched his head and said,
So you don't really think she did it?
Oh, not at all, he scoffed.
I just wanted to wipe that condescending smirk off her face. It makes no sense to use a plan that convoluted to get out of a contract.
Jack chuckled.
Well, your way was a lot more clean than mine would have been.
Down, Rover, Bake smirked. We'll get to that part.
We better, and quick like. I've got a terrible bloody hangover. Not me! I don't get those!
Despite himself, Bake's eye twitched. They were so absorbed in their riffing that they didn't even notice someone nearly bumping straight into them.
Yo, I know I'm all the way up here, but you should probably watch where you're— Ah, shit!
Bake paused his usual ramblings as he saw just who it was he was verbally vomiting at. The slightly nondescript man in the nice suit and sunglasses was none other than the owner of the studio himself.
Marcus Pearson, just the man I was hoping to see.
Oh, hey, boss. Pearson nodded slightly. Definitely a smooth operator. People often struggled with just how they should refer to Bake. Lord was way too formal, but just calling him Bake was way too presumptive for most. Pearson had found just the right word for the moment to show respect without too much deference. Bake immediately disliked the man. "You looking to hire a band or something?" he asked.
Not today, actually. Got a couple of questions for you.
He looked surprisingly unperturbed. "Sure, why don't we just step into my office?" Bake was getting really sick of offices, and this one made him dislike Pearson more. It was, again, just the right balance of professional but not unapproachable. None of the records he produced were up on the wall or anything like that, but several of the newer ones were laying nonchalantly by the record player. The player itself was small, but the speakers were very large. His desk was lightweight, tucked into the other side. The whole affair had just the right amount of bric-a-brac scattered around, too, signed pictures and such. It was also specifically calculated. There was no spontaneity to it, manufactured chill. It sent shivers down Bake's spine. Pearson gestured they sit, and they did, and once again explained the situation. Bake was pretty sick of it. If he was honest, this cop stuff involved a lot of repeating yourself, it turned out. "So that means I'm a suspect." Pearson nodded.
"Well, yes, and no," Bake admitted. "Of all the candidates, you have the least motivation, but there was something I was curious about. Sinclair mentioned that you met because you were trying to break a contract."
For the first time, Pearson's face twitched a little. "Why?" Jack must have noticed too, for he leaned forward slightly. "Well, yeah," he shrugged. "Is that important?"
"Was it at Katerina's?"
Bake probed. He was suddenly looking a bit pale. No, actually. It was, doesn't matter."
"Wait, you saying that it doesn't matter?" Jack asked. "Or you talking about the band?"
"The band."
"It's bloody confusing. But why would they want to break their contract?"
Bake scratched at his chin.
"Bottom dollar's a really good gig for them, right?"
"Well, we're, trying to set up a tour." More and more, Pearson was looking like a cornered animal.
"What?"
Jack tilted his head.
"Around the city?"
"Not exactly." Bake didn't like this.
"Not exactly?"
"Well, we've received an offer, you see, from, Mr. Holliday." The temperature in the room dropped by about 10 degrees. Even Jack looked a little unnerved as he glanced over at Bake. For a solid minute, Bake didn't do anything, just sat there, stock straight, his face frozen in an unreadable expression. Finally, he breathed in, and Pearson visibly cringed.
"I see,"
was all Bake said, very slowly and deliberately.
"Well, that clears that up. We have no further questions."
He stood up, turned around, and walked out the door. Jack followed cautiously behind. Bake didn't so much as cough until they were out of the building and back out onto 6th Avenue.
"Well,"
Jack lowered his head a little as he spoke,
"at least that's someone we can most likely cross off the list." "Yeah, he's probably got nothing to do with all this," Bake sighed. "But I'm gonna keep a very close eye on that one. Traitors don't get leniency." "Bloke looked about ready to piss himself when he said it, though."
Jack chuckled, desperately trying to lighten the mood.
"That bastard just doesn't give up, does he?"
Bake was speaking more to himself now than Jack.
"Just can't take fuck off for an answer. Mark my words, Jack."
That cold fury was rapidly warming back to normal Bake temperature.
"Next time I see that cane-twirling cocksucker, I'm gonna...
Jack waited in anticipation of violent declaration.
"I'm gonna eat his goddamn top hat."
And found himself sorely disappointed.
Man, it's times like this that I wish Discord had actual roads. Like, can you imagine cruising down the hill and making nasty deductions in a sick-ass ride?
Bake and Jack had caught a trolley car down to the bottom of the city, and the former had only been handed 3 phone numbers along the way.
"Well, mate,"
Jack patted him on the back, a bit sarcastically.
Should have thought to give it some then, eh?
His face scrunching in displeasure, Bake hunched, a little embarrassed.
I thought it would be really complicated,
he admitted.
And also, I wasn't thinking at the time, like, gee, someday I might want to go on a buddy cop adventure with my serial killer sidekick, Better Ad Rhodes. I honestly thought that would be, like, the first thing you'd think of. I was kind of a little frickin' busy trying to get the damn thing to even stick together.
Inane bullshit aside, the two wandered a while amongst the largely unlabeled warehouses and alchemy labs before they found what they were looking for, a nearly identical brick building with a dinky skull and crossbones flag waving out the front. Importation was a huge business in Discord. It was a little hard to grow or make much of anything on their own here, and every good importer needed somewhere to stash their shit. This was the warehouse owned and operated by Amelia Harkness's outfit. It was very close to the docks on the edge of the city, nearly right next to them, in fact. The far side even had an entrance big enough to accommodate a large vessel of some kind. And that, it turned out, was exactly what it was for. Upon entering the concrete interior, the first thing that caught their eyes was a huge airship, one that looked nearly piratical, with a wooden hull and large cloth sails. These probably once assisted the more mechanical and flotational devices in catching the wind. There was no wind in the other, so it had clearly been modified, and the sails were largely aesthetic at this point. But it was very telling of its captain's origins. There were only a handful of realities that built ships like that. They didn't get much further than admiring that ship in its little dry dock, though, because just then Bake heard the distinct sound of an old pistol's safety disengaging right next to his ear.
Lordy not, trespassers get shot.
Putting his hands above his head, and making sure Jack did the same, Bake turned towards the noise. Glancing past the barrel an inch away from his eye, he saw a very pretty lady attached to it.
Hey, that was a funky little rhyme there. Come up with it yourself? You can say she was a poet and didn't even...
Before Jack could finish that statement, several more safeties released around them. Several men and women had emerged from the gloom of the warehouse to back up who they could only assume must be Amelia Harkness.
What do you be wanting here? She asked. Don't care who you are. No one steps foot on my property without my say. Would you cool your jets? Bake sighed. We just want to ask you a few questions.
After explaining the situation yet again, the flintlocks were finally lowered.
All right, you want to talk, she said, thrusting the flintlock back in its holster. So talk. What, not going to take me to your office or anything? Don't got one. Oh, thank God.
Bake relaxed immediately.
Don't get too comfy there, mate,
Jack intoned, and Bake cleared his throat.
Right, he said, back to business. So, you're an importer, right? What's your wares?
Harkness shrugged.
Booze mostly. Get it from everywhere. Sake and soju from Okuma, whiskey from Rabden. Recently picked up a tequila from the west so strong it'll have you speaking Spanish. That's impressive. That is impressive, Bake whistled, and also means one very important thing. You're in direct competition with our victim.
Competition? She narrowed her eyes. Is it Debonair what got his safe robbed?
That's right,
Jack chimed in before Bake could stop him. So you think I robbed him so I'd no longer be competing with him for business?
Well, that's why you were meeting with Sinclair, right? To get your products at her bar. But it didn't go so well, right? Because loyalty runs surprisingly thick here in Discord, and Rudy's got a quality product to back it up.
Harkness's hand didn't go for the gun this time. Instead, it snaked over to the rapier on her other hip.
This is starting to sound a lot like an accusation. Maybe it is.
The two had been getting closer to each other this whole time, but just when Harkness entered biting distance, "Well, I'll be. Those are some very stellar deductions from a drunkard like yourself. I must say I am impressed." Bake's body temperature immediately rose. He knew that fucking voice. It filled him with such an intense sense of loathing that it could only belong to one particular son of a gun.
"Oh, is that bloke?"
Jack blurted out before Bake could recover enough to speak. He turned towards the metal staircase that led to a few second-floor rooms where someone had just emerged.
"What's his name? Fucking Mayday or something?"
"It's Holiday." The man with the cane shit-eating smirk dropped just a smidge. "You had best remember it."
"I won't bother,"
Bake nearly growled.
He's just an annoying fucking pest that won't die no matter how much you smack it with the newspaper. I should have known you were involved.
And what gave you that confidence?
Well, I mean, what else can you do to fuck with me at this point?
Quickly, Bake tried to regain his composure as Holiday descended the stairs.
Bourbon Street's banned. You failed to get a casino on my turf, so the only thing you can do is turn my own people against me. Cause a little internal chaos.
Raising an eyebrow, Holiday laughed. And just what is it that you think I did?
You hired her,
Bake gestured to Harkness, who had backed off since her boss had entered the room,
to steal a bunch of shit from the Merchants Guild vault, to do whatever shenaniganry you wanted, maybe just cause confusion, I don't fucking know, and then you left a little breadcrumb trail so we would find you and you could gloat about it. That sound about right?
Holiday laughed, and the sound boomed in the hollow space. Correct on all accounts. He dramatically tipped his top hat. On everything, that is, except one.
And, what's that?
Bake asked after Holiday didn't elaborate. But it wasn't him who gave the response. I didn't steal from no vault. Harkness scowled.
Like I'd do a petty job like that.
The smile on Holiday's face made Bake want to tear it off. Despite everything, despite having uncovered this conspiracy nearly single-handedly, Holiday had still managed to pull one over on him. Even if he could figure out who he'd put up to the task right here and now, the fact remained that he had been wrong, and they both knew it. But it was better than the alternative of having to be told, shit. He needed a name, and he needed one now. Bake racked his brains, sluggishly shifting through everything he knew. And something pinged. This hadn't been the first time he'd heard Holiday's name today. Where had it been? And why had it... Bake's frown deepened, which only caused Holiday's opposing expression to be more infuriating.
It was Pearson, wasn't it? Cool, the slimeball producer?
Jack looked a little confused.
Yeah, it was him. Because you've got him under contract, don't you? You predictable demon fuck. That's why he was desperate to get out of Sinclair's. Sure, their deal may have been legally binding, but yours was bound at the fucking soul level. It's the perfect play because I'd never guess. Pearson cares about his reputation too much to commit petty theft, but you left him no choice.
After pausing for a second to make sure he was finished, Holiday clapped, long and hard. Honestly, I am impressed. It took you 2 tries, but you didn't need any hints. Though if you don't mind, I'll still chalk this up as a win for myself. Bake was just about to open his mouth, but Jack once again beat him to it.
Hold on there, mate. I've got a question.
Turning to him for the first time, Holiday's expression resembled one watching a dog perform a mildly amusing trick.
How's she involved?
He pointed over to Harkness.
'Cause she's clearly working for you too, but if she didn't do it, what gives?
Oh, you see. That's simple. Holiday turned. She's a trap. He glided through the door and out of sight just as several members of Harkness's crew slid into place to cover him, and very shortly after that, Bake and Jack found themselves surrounded.
Well, fuck, fellas, Bake chuckled. I don't suppose we can talk this out? Sure, Harkness growled, right after we beat the shite out of you.
Unfortunately for her, Jack's smile was both wider and more unhinged than it really needed to be.
You really think you're gonna get that far?
Harkness looked supremely confused, glancing around at the rather large number of foes surrounding the two. Yes? Jack's head swiveled over to Bake, practically chomping at the bit. Bake sighed. It was good to let him off the leash every once in a while. Did marvels for morale.
Go nuts,
he said. And before any one of them could move, Jack's knife was out and buried in the throat of the nearest goon. Almost instantly, the room erupted into chaos. Bake distinctly heard the sound of Jack's wild laughter and howls over the rest of the cacophony. The SOB with the open throat had collapsed to the floor, gaping like a landed fish. Bake fumbled around for a second until he found his gun and snatched it. It looked like a flintlock pistol, but it actually had rather modern internals and a full clip to boot. Convenient, as Bake would have probably blown his own head off trying to fuck with gunpowder. Of course, most of the goons were more focused on the immediate threat that was Jack. He was already covered in blood and having the time of his life. In a panic, one of the crewmates tried to rush him, but Jack didn't even bother with the knife. He just simply stuck his fingers right into the man's intestines and pulled.
Oi, brother,
he called to Bake.
You know what's the only thing better than a knife?
Bake slid to the side to avoid a rogue pointy thing aimed at his head.
For you? No, I don't. A fucking bigger knife.
With his one hand still in the poor bastard's internals, Jack grabbed his cutlass with the other and started waving it around wildly. It was clear the goons were rapidly growing skittish of him, which meant that in just a second they were going to start coming for Bake. But not before Harkness herself noticed the dropping morale and cut through the crowd to face Jack.
Ah, he grinned. I was hoping for this. Please tell me you can actually put up a bloody fight.
I was going to ask you the same thing.
Brilliant. On God.
Their duel set, the lackeys turned their attention elsewhere.
Ah, fuck,
Bake mumbled, but who the hell was he to deny Jack his fun? He'd just simply have to put up with it. Admittedly, he wasn't the best shot in the world, and he only had one clip. Yet if there was one thing Bake was, it was a slippery little shit. He weaved in and out of the fracas, avoiding bullets and sword swings left and right. Finally, someone ran straight towards him, and Bake didn't hesitate. He got him right between the eyes. This unnerved the others palpably. Bake didn't often shoot people, but it wasn't due to any squeamishness on his part. It was mostly due to the fact that it didn't gel well with his idiot fuckboy persona. What this meant was that on the rare occasion that he did splatter someone's brains against the wall in cold blood, they remembered just who they were fucking dealing with. It didn't stop them for long, though. Across the room, Jack and Harkness were engaged in a battle of epic proportions, and this seemed to egg on the men. Bake managed to take down another one or two, but again, he was not a very good shot. His clip was gone, and there were a lot more dudes.
Ah, hell. Guess it's time to use my trump card.
The next time a man rushed him down with a sword, just a few seconds later, Bake raised his hand in the air, snapped his fingers, and the man exploded into a spray of human viscera. That ended the fight pretty quickly. Jack disarmed Harkness just then and held her at sword point. She was pretty cut up, but otherwise unharmed. Jack's eyes still had a wild, dangerous look about them, but Bake knew how to handle him.
Go ahead and pick one, good buddy, he said, as a warning.
His face lit up, and Jack skulked away to stress test the horrified crew.
The rest of you, scram. As for you,
he turned to Harkness, his gun pointed directly at her face.
I want you out of my goddamn city. Take your traitor ass back to your master like the good little bitch you are.
And what if I refuse? She stuttered.
He hated when people tried to act defiant. Well, then you'll end up like Sloppy Joe back there.
Bake stared at her and grinned. People seemed to really not like it when he did that. After a few seconds of fighting the pressure, Harkness turned and ran to her airship, and the rest of her crew, save the one who currently had one of Jack's knives digging into his shoulder, followed after her.
Jeez, where's Kay when you need her? Bake sighed. Now I have to clean up the rest of this mess myself. You coming?
He turned towards the door. Jack shook his head, his eyes not leaving his soon-to-be victim.
I think I'll be here a bit longer. You want me to take care of that?
He asked, pointing to the sack of flesh that had once been a man splattered across the floor.
Nah,
Bake waved him off.
It'll only be like another 10 minutes before he remembers that he's not fucking meatloaf.
Of course, Bake first went for Pearson, in order to recover the documents, which luckily had not been handed over to Holiday yet. There might have never been any intention to. He suffered a similar fate to Harkness, though with a lot more sniveling involved. Looked like Doesn't Matter was going to have to get a new agent. Debonair was thrilled that Bake not only took care of the problem, but it also happened to have gotten rid of one of his more annoying rivals, so it all worked out in the end on that front at least. After that, Bake spent the next few days high and asleep. He simply wasn't cut out for this thinking crap, but at least he'd have something to brag about to Kay when she got back.